Get started and go from there. So, everyone, thank you so much for being here. Much appreciated. This is every round two, which we have Mondays, 8 p.m. Eastern. If you watch this on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. And consider hitting that join button if you haven't done so already. Consider becoming YouTube members, putting us that way if you enjoy getting this content 7 days a week. All right, we're going to go down the line and we're going to introduce our amazing guests. I'm actually very, very excited to talk to them. We'll start, my man, Eucharist, back with us. Eucharist is actually a really kind individual. Always happy that they're around. I was really excited when they said yes. I didn't think they would for today, because you're usually quite busy. So thank you for stopping by, buddy.
Yeah, don't thank me too much in advance, because y'all are gonna probably be real mad by the end of it, but it's okay. I'm glad to be back. I like to come when I can. Yeah. Like there's a chance I might have to like jet out of here in an emergency. My whole house is sick. My baby's coughing, but she's asleep right now. So if she stays asleep, all will be fine with the world. So,
okay, thank you. And obviously hope that your little one gets better soon.
I hope my brain fog is gone so I can actually speak competently. We'll see.
Okay. Already come up with sleeves. Tiberius, thank you for coming through, buddy. I haven't seen Tiberius here in quite a long time. But Tiberius is joining us today. How are you, Tiberius?
I'm doing good. It is great to be back on the PrimeCayes Reverie, or as I like to get it wrong, what is it? PrimeCayes Reverie. I keep saying it the wrong wrong every single time.
Reverie.
Yeah. Anyway, no, it's great to be back here. I sent you an invite or a message, and I was just like, "Hey, dude, where's the love? Haven't seen you for a bit. Let's do this." So I'm thankful to be invited. I really am. And you hit me on a really particular topic that I do. I'm not gonna say I want to fight about, but I definitely have my opinions on. So it's about the one thing that I've actually wanted to talk about in a moral argument. So yeah, this will be fun.
Okay. Next we have my man Wick. Back with us. Wick is one of our most reliable guests, right? And always welcome. Always welcome. Thank you, Wick, for stopping by.
Well, thanks for the invite. I always appreciate it. And just forewarning, gang, if I suddenly freeze up and disappear, my internet service provider knocked on my door halfway into my stream, and I had them push it back as far as I could, and they said they have to work on it a little bit. It should be down only for about 10 to 20 minutes max. I hope that's true. So you might get a little break from Wick, but I haven't abandoned. I haven't run in fear. They're just working on my internet. But yeah, love to be here. PrimeCayes great. The Reverie is great, and gang, I'm here ready to throw hands, right? Like proverbially. So yeah.
So Wick gets to register excuses in advance. Okay, all
right. That's my privilege. So
okay. Next, we have my man, Fanatic, a person I know I'm going to have a good time when Fanatic's around, right? Absolutely, right? I'll be frustrated, but I'm going to have a great time. Fanatic, thank you for being here.
Listen, I'm going to tell you right now, I cannot be more excited than to be here talking to some of the very people that have been the bane of all things I think are holy. And, in a timeline where they're finally not having the power, so they have to engage. This will be a glorious conversation. I can't wait. I need to open up PrimeCayes chat so I can see these people mobbing. This is going to be great.
No one takes a victory like my man Fanatic does. So Doobie maybe give you a run for your money there. Doobie knows how to rub in a person's face. Next we'll go to Madam Genevieve. Hello, hi, back with us again. We've had you only one other time, I think, here, and we enjoyed having you. And we're very thankful that you took time on your day to join us. How are you, Madam Genevieve?
Hey, I'm good. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I am Madam Genevieve and proud to be the bane of all that is holy. Fanatic represented in one person right here. That's right. I am a sex positive feminist. I am a sex worker. I am an advocate for legalization of cannabis and general equal rights across the board. I'm fairly new to the Twitch debate sphere, if you will. I actually got into it specifically because Roe v. Wade and abortion access is a subject that I am particularly passionate about. And I look forward to this dialogue.
Okay, so I am extremely excited. Like you are perfect. If I had known, if I had remembered all those like adjectives like you attach to yourself, I would have you on more specifically for my friend Fanatic here. I think you two are going to get along so well. He needs a playmate, so
well, I have a wall of toys behind me, so you can
there we
see
go.
how I like to treat my playmates.
This is amazing. I love to see it. All right, thank you. Next we have our friend Ginger, who just made it. Ginger, thank you for stopping by. Ginger comes through our open panels every so often, and we have great conversations. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I don't really have an opening.
Okay, all right. Just that Fanatic is wrong. That's all you got to say. Fanatic is wrong.
Yeah, pretty much. No, I'm kidding.
You don't have to be kidding. Like,
You don't have to be
you
kidding.
can say he's wrong.
Yeah. Okay, and then last but not least, we have our Dark Lord and Savior. Doobie is back here with us, but Doobie, he's going to be on my side. I'm really excited about this too. Doobie, thank you for coming through.
No, Prem, I've actually, since we last spoke, I did a lot of writing. Lots of reading, lots of writing. In my, just try to like gather my thoughts on the issue. And I think I'm probably a lot closer to Fanatic now. I found God, specifically the white Christian Jesus. And, you know, maybe it's not okay to kill babies, you know? I've just had to change my heart.
All right. Yeah, Jesus makes miracles happen, right? So
That ain't my side.
all right, let's continue forward. All right. First topic. Roe v. Wade has been overturned by the Supreme Court. The question of abortion's legality has now been handed back to the states. This is a good thing. Should states ever have control of basic rights? Should it be the case that access to care is dependent on location? If so, do you feel that this is also true of civil rights, or should this be handled on the federal level? At this point, I think some people maybe don't understand that when it comes to Roe v. Wade, like abortion isn't quote unquote banned across the land. It's simply just handed back to the states, and then your state can ban it. But is that something that we should be allowing? All right, like are there certain rights that have that shouldn't be debated over in this manner, right? And should your rights literally change, and your core rights change, depending on where you just happen to be living? All right, so we'll go to the line. We'll do opening statements. You, Chris, please.
Yeah, there's a lot packed into this first question that makes it kind of a little tough to answer in some ways. So first, the premise is that the question of abortion legality has been handed back to the states. In a sense, that's true because the states do have laws in the books that regulate abortion. But in another sense, it's really just been taken out of the hands of an unelected body, which is the Supreme Court, which made a rule or a law of the land for everyone summarily back in Roe v. Wade and reaffirmed in Casey. It could just as well go to Congress, right? We could regulate this at the federal level. Nothing about the Dobbs decision says that we can't. It says right now it's up to the states. The federal government could step in. Pairing that, as you did with the civil rights question, right? It's exactly what we did with civil rights. We had this period where we said, well, no, what we can do is we can regulate these things on the state level. We can deal with segregation state by state. We can let the states, sort of integrate schools slowly as they choose to, blah, blah. That didn't work super well, right? And so we have famous cases of even conservatives, most famously somebody like William F. Buckley, who was like a big states' rights advocate when it came to civil rights matters, seeing how shittily the implementation of Brown v. Board versus Education went, in the South and saying, no, actually, this is something that we do need to deal with at the federal level. So I would say that the way I would distinguish this from civil rights is that we didn't have the Supreme Court come in and say, here are your civil rights now that didn't exist in the Constitution but now do. We passed the Civil Rights Act. And perhaps if you think that abortion needs to be handled the same way across the board in America, that's the way to handle it. Is this a good thing? Yes, I'm pro-life. I think it's a good thing that we no longer have one of the most permissive abortion regimes in the world. I think if I'm being my most like conciliatory and my least dogmatic, like it would probably be better if we had something closer to what a lot of European nations do have. If I'm trying to be like compromisey, but no, I'm going to own this like Fanaticus at the beginning. Like this is kind of a W for us. Like this is something that was handed down from on high, and I'm kind of glad that it's changed and we can have some actual conversation about it now.
Okay, I hate to interject, but the guy's like, can I cut it now? So if I could jump in line, give my opening statement, let you guys talk while he cuts it, and then come back in like 10 minutes. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So my opening statement is just really brief on this, really concise here, is I think that while I do think that localities deserve some amount of autonomy in how they govern, I think that's probably best practice. I think when it comes to the basic rights that we have as citizens, that it should not be up to your locality to tell you what you can and cannot do with your body in this way, or what basic access you should or should not have to medical procedures, or what basic access you should not have to things like stores being able to serve you, or choosing to have the ability to serve you or not based on your sex, gender, religion, skin color, etc. So I think that at the end of the day that no, I think abortion and access to medical procedures for women's healthcare and men's healthcare isn't something that localities should be able to determine, but instead should be left to the federal government to at least guarantee at least a base level. We look at some of these states and the draconian measures they're putting in with no exceptions for the health of the mother, no exceptions for rape and incest, and it's just horrific. I think it's going to have a terrible effect on our society and culture, and I think it's largely going to drive us into kind of like a two-class system where you have the poor and those unable to make the trip who do not live in access to clinics for women's health care, and then you're going to have those who do, and it's going to be the effects are terrible. But thank you again. Sorry, they got to cut it, so I'll be back in like 20 minutes, gang. I promise. Okay. I love you all. Bye.
Talk to you later, buddy. Okay, let's go to Ginger now. Ginger, please. Oh, it's actually no, Fanatic, you're on this side.
Yeah,
Fanatic, you go first.
Yeah, so obviously this is something that should have been left up to the states. I think society has like all of the rules to be able to tell you what you can and can't do with your body. We do it all the time. States tell a woman that she can't sell her vagina, right? Or a man for that matter. And trust me, I've been in high demand. If it wasn't for those states. But anyway, I'm sorry. My point being, the states do tell you that you can't do sex work. That's something that you can do with your body. State does it all the time. States have policies specifically saying that, like, if a woman drinks while she's pregnant because of the harm to the fetus, that's something that we should be considering. Like, you have to report those people to child services and things like that, and those people can lose their parental rights. We obviously recognize that, like, I would say that the fetus inside of somebody is a life. In plenty of jurisdictions where they say things like, hey, if you kill somebody who's pregnant, you'll get charged with that person's murder and the murder of that unborn child. Sometimes you have attempted murder on an unborn child. So we obviously recognize that this thing has rights, and these rights are worthy of protection. It's just about how much, how soon, and how much, whatever. So I'm really, really happy with the Supreme Court doing what they did there. I think if people feel uncomfortable enough, like that something is immoral, that it shouldn't be done, then in a democracy, you should be able to make laws to say that this thing shouldn't be done if there's good standing for it. And then that thing needs to go ahead and be eradicated from a society instead of forcing people to live next to baby killers. It just doesn't make any sense.
Ty, I think we had to skip you because of everything's out of order and it messes me for me. All right, like I can only do simple things as go across the screen, so I'm sorry. Ty, please.
No, it's good, man. I appreciate it. So I'm gonna come out straight and easy, because this is where two of my moral principles crash into each other, and basically my ethical wires cross, and the ethical calculator in my head basically fucking explodes when it comes to this issue. So that out of the way, legalistically and morally, I just generally side with the right. I'm not pro-life to an absolute extent, but I don't like abortion. And legalistic speaking, I never like how the Supreme Court likes to legislate from the bench. That pisses me off a lot. But I actually don't like this decision because on my other principle here is that I believe in liberalism. I believe in tolerance to people, even if you don't like what the fuck they do. Now, I'm never going to advocate for open abortions and on demand all the way up to the day before birth, but I'm like, all right, I'm willing to tolerate this. And I can, go down the stats. We were having less abortions every single year since Roe has been enacted. It's immoral. I don't really like it. But when it came down to me, is that people were given this social opportunity, the social right to use, and they were using it, quote unquote, properly to me. I don't like it, but I'm willing to tolerate something. And then when it comes down to it, is that while I side with the right really isn't doing anything to cure economic woes here. And I'm like, look, are you going to help these kids after they're born? And the answer generally is just fuck them. That's not pro-life. That's just being pro-birth. And I am going to side with the left in that argument because they're right. So there needs to be a conversation on the right and how they're going to help families if they're going to push forward this narrative. I'm not going to let you off the hook on that one. So when it comes to economic rights, that's where I actually do side more with the states and how that works. I like the federal level being able to say, hey, look, you know what, we're going to protect this even if we don't agree with it, because social rights are incredibly important. I just think economic rights were the disaster of the 20th century, and I don't want to repeat that again. So we'll move off from that. Thank you for having me have this wonderful intro. I can't wait for the open.
Okay. Now, Ginger, please.
Okay, so my standpoint is that I don't feel like it's as big of a deal as it's being made out to be that it's in the hands of the states. It's actually kind of better in a sense, because you don't want somebody who's so far away from what city that and state that you're in dealing with what issues are in place. I'm pro choice, but I do believe that this isn't necessarily as far step back as everybody's making it out. Well, the left is making it out to be. Or I feel like we got to get out there and vote in our states if we want things to take place instead of, kind of crying about it on Twitter. I also feel like if they're going to make it so that the states can decide on whether or not it's illegal, that they should allow for free contraceptives and free and anonymous birth control and day after pills.
Okay, thank you. Next, Madam Genevieve.
Hi. I think this is a really, really terrible decision to give back to the states. I don't think that any medical access should be based on where you live. I think that in a modern society, especially one that touts itself as the greatest nation on earth, we shouldn't be limited in how we care for ourselves simply based on the area in which we live. In addition to that, we do know multiple polls have shown us that the majority of Americans, generally around 2/3, if not more, depending on what survey you look at, the majority of Americans do support abortion access in some capacity. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of gray area as far as what that looks like, but most people are in support of it, at least in certain situations. And so I think that that's representative of the nation as a whole and our desires to have this be a right that at least can be protected in some capacity. We also know that the less access there is, the longer the delay might be before someone is able to seek out a provider that can help them with what they are looking for, if somebody has to plan travel, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where we get into abortions that are later in the pregnancy. And so I think that the easiest way to really reduce later term abortions is to, again, have access to it, so people can seek that out as soon as they know that that's the right choice for them. The same states that already have or are likely to impose some of the strictest regulations are also the same states that have some of the highest maternal mortality rates, particularly for women of color. And I think that that's really concerning as well.
Thank you. Doobie, please.
So yeah, I don't think that individual states should have control over basic rights. I think the federal government has an interest in guiding the culture of our nation in a way that's like beneficial to its citizens and national interests. I think a ban on a woman's right to abort inconvenient babies is as fundamental a right to me as like the right to freedom of expression and due process. So I can imagine a world where like I can be convinced to support leaving this up to the states, right? But I don't think this is that world, right? So I know that you guys are all well aware of attempts by both parties to undermine the democratic process at the state level through voter ID, gerrymandering, and the targeted closure of polling booths, right? So given that this is the landscape we're living in, I don't understand why anybody would feel comfortable leaving a decision about basic rights up to a state level vote before this kind of like corruption is dealt with.
Okay, open to the panel.
Well, I mean, the question of whether or not it is a basic right is sort of what's at issue, right? Because it came from the Supreme Court decision that just decided it existed with no real precedent at all. Like, I don't know if you guys have like sat down and read Roe, but it's just like, it's pretty bonkers compared to any other Supreme Court case you read. It's just like, this is a thing that we think exists now, and for reasons, it's true, right? And so, yes, I mean, we have 5 decades of that being true, and so that needs to be taken into account. I think like it's hard to flip a switch like that, but where that right comes from is just 9 unelected people, most of them white dudes, just saying, yeah, this exists now. It's a real thing, and you have to believe it, right? I think that's kind of what's at issue.
I absolutely agree with that, but I kind of want to push back in a different way. And like legalistically speaking, I said I agree with the right on this one, and I still do. The problem is that like the American people have to actually make a choice now. Is this something that we legitimately care about? Can we codify that in the law? I'm actually kind of really excited for this in a level. Maybe this is a little megalomaniacal, but the Congress doesn't do its fucking job. Hasn't done it for like 50 damn years. Like, this should have never been a Supreme Court decision. It should have been a codified act of Congress, maybe even a constitutional amendment, and it's not. And so I really do want to see the Democrats run on that this year. I want to see when the chips are on the table, what America actually votes on. Do they care about social rights, which the Democrats are going to run on, or do they care about, like, you know, whether you believe it or not, are the Republicans better at economics? I'm not going to put my hat into that ring. I'm just excited, actually. America actually has to get off its fucking ass for once. Is anyone else kind of like excited a little bit about this? Like, we actually see where people go when the chips are down?
Well, actually, Ty, I'll say this, that like I have, when we were talking about this on Saturday, I was saying something similar in that I like the one silver lining I have here. Like, this is generally a terrible thing for me, but one silver lining is that I like that people will have to make the case, right, for reproductive rights. That this fight was kind of shortcutted by the Supreme Court, but now, you know, state by state, you gotta have that fight, and you gotta convince individuals. Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely, Prime. That was my favorite thing about this whole thing, is because for the longest, you leftists have never actually been engaging in the fight at all. Almost this entire time, I keep using this word, but you guys have been incredibly petulant. Anytime we tried to talk about it, you guys would shut down the conversation and shut down like little children, saying things like, if you don't have ovaries, then you shouldn't have a say on it. If you don't have it's my body, my choice. Or you men just want to control women's bodies. All of these statements, all these statements don't mean anything, but what they do is just shut down conversation. It's the left version of because I said so. Right? You ever been in a situation where you're like trying to negotiate with a parent and you're trying to get them to like, wait, can you understand? Like, this is why we should be allowed. Maybe if we they just shut down and they just shut down in the middle of that and just say, because I said so. There is no back and forth here. And when you say my body, my choice, it's the exact same thing. You refuse to engage. So sure, I guess you're right. The difference is you guys were doing this argument from a place of power, because when you shut down the conversation, if no conversation happens, no movement has happened. No movement happens, and if no movement happens, you get to continue. You get to keep your way. That's why you guys were doing that. You guys shut down the conversations nonstop. Now, there are plenty of people on the right that were constantly making arguments about, I don't know, it's not about like you just want to murder babies. It's about, hey, this is a life that we feel like we should be protecting. But instead, I've never heard any leftists ever charitably interpret what the right is saying about babies. It's always just been some sort of petulant shutdown. And so now you are going to have to actually engage. And I'm here for it. I want to hear what you guys actually have to say. I'm waiting for it.
So let's give Genevieve a shot, and then you, Chris, I think you want to jump in.
I feel like that was such a bullshit cop-out as far as saying that the left doesn't want to engage, when the right is the one who's literally... the only response they have is you're murdering a baby, and that's repeated over and over and over and over and over again. That and just don't have sex. Like, what the fuck? That's stupid. On the left, you are hearing arguments about how it is legitimate healthcare and how the American Medical Association and all of our other national and several international boards of health professionals and scientists do recognize this as a necessary medical treatment in certain situations, and that it is providing healthcare. Those are conversations that people on the left want to have. They also want to have conversations about the consequences of what happens when people are forced to carry a pregnancy to term when that's not their choice. And again, the left just wants to be the right wants to call themselves extremely pro-life when they don't seem to care about that life once it's been born. And we can see that as evidenced in numerous examples.
No, it's not true. The right gives way more to charity. If you look at conservative countries,
not caring for families. Do you want
to? If you look at conservative countries, they give more to charity. If you look at the red states, they give more to charity. I mean, all this talk about people don't care about the babies once they're born. If we really want to go there, I would say that of all of the religious ideologies, and I know this doesn't have to be a religious argument, but of all of them, the white evangelicals are the ones that are the most staunchly opposed to abortion, right? And yet they are the ones that adopt the most children. They are the ones that give the most to charity. So all this talk about nobody caring about the babies once they're born, Christians adopt children 2 to 1 versus their non-Christian counterparts. So that's just absolutely factually untrue. And secondly, you're obfuscating the point when you start saying nonsense like, oh, it's a form of healthcare in some situations. We all know that there are specific exceptions that I don't even think people on the right disagree with. The idea that if it's versus the life of the mother, aka medical expediency, then we should obviously preserve the life of that mother. And there are going to be certain situations where you're going to have to make that decision. And obviously, all those decisions, we should say, then the life of the mother should be preserved. We also recognize exceptions for rape. Only 3 states out of all the states that are now passing anti-abortion legislation, only 3 of them are talking about no exceptions for rape and incest. The rest of them all agree. So this isn't like some widespread non-engagement. It's just an obfuscation, because that's not the point at hand. Because we all agree when it comes to medical expediency to do this. But let's get back to the actual issue of, is it a life? Is it necessary in most cases? And the answer is no. It's an elective medical procedure, which seems like the murdering of a child, which is the crux of the entire argument from the right.
So Genevieve, you can respond if you like. Then we'll go to you, Chris, and Doobie, and then Ty, and then Ginger.
Perfect.
So, okay, you want to take it to the core of this, which is it a life? Does life begin at conception? That's generally something that's advocated for by a religious group, and that has no place in government or medicine.
It doesn't have to be religious. They're seculars for abortion. It's not religious necessarily.
The majority generally comes from that perspective. Yes.
Not over here, though. That's not where I'm basing it on. So that's the argument. For some people, it's a life.
I'm waiting for you to shut up so I can finish my argument, actually, because you seem to be really fucking bad at listening to anybody other than yourself.
You interrupted me during my first speech. The first time I was talking, you interrupted multiple times. Did you not? Don't sit here and get indignant now because I interjected very lightly when you interrupted me nonstop the first time. But go ahead. Make your banal point so I can go ahead and address it.
I was going to ask how things went, but okay. Go ahead.
So here's this, fanatic, since you have a short-term memory issue. I did interrupt your first point. However, as soon as I recognized my behavior, I stopped and I hadn't done it since.
You did it multiple times. It's right here on stream. I can show it to you multiple times. Don't sit here and lie about the past, but it's fine. We do interrupt on this panel. You can go ahead and make your point, and I'll let you finish it. But don't get indignant like you didn't do it first. Go ahead.
I admitted that I did it first. I also admitted that I
Incessantly
taught my behavior. However, let's get back to the point. Can we say that life begins at conception? The answer is no. The answer is no. Medical, scientific, nobody can say that that is true. There is no proof for that. It's like trying to advocate that something that has the potential to become something else is worthy of all of the same rights and protections of it once that same thing is fully developed. It's not the same thing. Potential for life is not equal to life and therefore does not deserve these same rights and protections. We can have,
I agree,
a kind of silly example here, but if I had all the ingredients to a cake sitting out, it's not a cake just because I mixed them all up into a bowl and now they're combined. It has to only become a cake once it's been fully baked. And granted, that line of where it's a cake and not just raw ingredients mixed in a bowl is up for debate, absolutely. But the answer is not to say that all of the ingredients mixed in the bowl, that's inherently a cake right then and there, and we should assume that it deserves to be treated as such.
I agree with you.
Okay. All right. So let's go to you, Chris, Doobie, Ty, Ginger, Wick.
Okay, I think we could probably have a pretty productive discussion if we don't just get to the core like pro-life debate. I mean, we can try, but I don't think we're mostly equipped for that. But I mean, if it is, I think you're right. Like, it is a debate at what arbitrary point from, you know, fertilization / maybe implantation to birth, we decide this thing is deserving of moral consideration and legal rights. Now, maybe that's somewhat arbitrary, but my point earlier was that the rest of the developed world has answered that question very differently than the United States has. So like when you're looking at just like when elective abortions are allowed, most of Europe, it's 12 to 14 weeks is the cutoff. The United States, many states pre this decision into the second trimester was very common. And we can talk, you know, it's a reverse exponential graph of how, like, when abortions take place. Most of them, yes, take place in this first trimester, but we were still far more permissive than most of the rest of the developed world on when we allowed elective abortions. So, like, if we're going to talk about, like, what policies we should be striving for, you guys mentioned, like, yeah, or Ty mentioned, like, maybe we should have been, like, discoursing about this before, coming up with laws. You guys may have seen recently some, you know, retrospective headlines about Joe Biden pushing for a bill like this in the 80s that would have kicked it back to the states rather than just leaving it to the Supreme Court. Some criticisms of Obama not signing the Freedom of Choice Act, right? This is something that we could have been talking about and dealing with for a long time, because lots and lots of people from the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s on knew that this was an inherently fragile decision, that this was something that could very well come down the pipeline if you had the right setup of judges, which we do right now. So you mentioned Madam infant mortality rates and maternal mortality rates, sorry. And I think that's really important. I think it's worth talking about, like, why the US has, like, you know, when like WHO looked at, like, a list of, like, 11 developed countries, the US was the worst on that list for maternal mortality. That's really bad, okay? But the only country in the EU that fully bans abortion, defined the way they do, which is somewhat unique, is Malta. And they have one of the lowest maternal mortality rates in the entire world. And they've actually reported in the past 15 years, like, no maternal deaths. The estimates of maternal deaths are like 3 to 6 per 100,000 over the past, like, 15 to 20 years. So I don't think there's, like, an obvious correlation between, like, when we allow women to get elective abortions and maternal mortality rates. So we should probably talk about, like, how we could fix that, how we can make that better. I agree. Like, there are real policy things Republicans could be doing to improve that situation that they should have done long before this, knowing that this was their goal, and that they should now be doing, and they're not. And so I think we can justifiably criticize them on those grounds.
Let's go to Doobie.
So yeah, I think that saying that hey, it's only 3 states that are talking about banning abortion with no exceptions for rape and incest. First of all, I don't think that's true. I just Googled it really quickly, and there are way more than 3 states. First off, I think I can read them off for you right now if that's easier. So there's Alabama, Arkansas, Kentucky, Missouri, and South Dakota, Texas, Louisiana, I think Louisiana, it's currently like blocked, but it would have gone into effect, right? And there are a lot of other states along these same lines that are pushing for further and further restrictions past the ones that they already have with like the trigger laws that went into effect. So it's just like tens of millions of people, right, in these states that are now living in a place where women cannot get an abortion, even if they've been raped or even if they've been molested or like had incest in some other way, right? So I don't think we should be downplaying that. That's a lot of people, right, in these states. Secondly, I'm kind of curious as to like where people on the panel draw the line, because I think there's some of you that are like pro-life or whatever. Do you guys support exceptions for rape and incest, like the people on the panel?
No.
Eucharist? Are you no?
Okay. So you'd force a woman to go through pregnancy even if she'd been raped.
I mean, yeah, I think like if you take the stance that I do on like what determines when a life is a life worth, the considerations we give life, the origin of it is kind of inconsequential. Yeah. So I think like the rape and incest stuff is very persuasive if you take the line that what determines what should be done here is the woman's autonomy. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. But I think there are things that override our autonomy all the time, as Fanatic mentioned. So
and Fanatic, it sounded like you would support exceptions for rape and incest, right?
Yeah, obviously. That's crazy. Any person saying otherwise is nuts.
Okay.
I'll be nuts. That's fine.
Yeah. So I was just kind of curious as to like what people's on the panel stances were specifically. And Tiberius, I think you were also pro-life, if I remember correctly. I might have missed that.
I don't float into this category very well on either side because I'm pretty much okay with abortions throughout the first trimester.
Okay.
And then if you need to make exceptions later, that's fine. But like I piss everybody off on this episode because I'm not right enough to really appease the right, but I'm not left enough to appease the left.
Yeah.
So I guess dirty centrism on this episode.
And last thing before I get off the stage or whatever. So what do you guys think about the point that I made about like, so we're leaving this up to the states, sure, but these states are democracies that are very flawed right now. They're very corrupt in a lot of the country, like gerrymandering, the closing of voting booths, people pushing for state ID, things like this. I'm sorry, for voter ID, to suppress the vote of certain people. They don't want voting. So given that the system right now, I think we'd all agree is pretty fucked in a lot of states. Like, why would we be okay with allowing this to be left up to the states?
Well, because even if you feel like the states, like the whole thing needs to be improved, it doesn't mean that you don't fundamentally think that this is the way things should be. It's just you obviously fundamentally feel like the state thing should be fixed as well. But I think you can recognize that something is just not ideal for the federal government to be handling, and I think that's what that position is rooted in.
Can I say one more really, really quick thing about the rape incest stuff before we go on? I just want to, like, even if I grant you guys, like, politically, I think that's a tricky issue. Like, I know where I stand, like, on why I think life matters and blah, blah, blah. Politically, even if we grant, like, all the exceptions, like rape, incest, life of the mother, we're still talking about less than 1% or around 1% of all abortions in the United States based on data. Like, just the elective abortions is the largest number. So like, even if we grant that exception, we're still, like, what we're arguing about is the 95 to 99% of abortions that are elective.
Since my turn's up next, I'll take it to answer Doobie's question. I largely agree with this. It's actually one of the biggest reasons why I'm like a bit like of government unitarian. The more people you have in that system, the more you kind of have to compromise between everybody. And I'm going to say it in this regard, as much as I hate the federal government on a lot of different regards, it's run better than most of the state governments by far, because everyone has to get something that they want out of it. And that means while it's a slow bitch and it doesn't do half the stuff that we want with any kind of relative speed or time, the fact that everyone largely has to chip in on what goes through the federal government does make it to where when it goes through, it is highly impactful and it is highly regulatory to the body whole, and it's effective. So like, we're kind of re-answering the question here for Prime's original question. I really like this being a federal thing. I really want it to be a federal thing, but I don't know if what the population actually wants. Like, this is something that we have to vote on.
Okay, let's go to Ginger and then Wick.
Well, I'd like to bring it to the people that are pro-life. What are your thoughts on free contraceptive and free morning after pills, instead of just all or nothing?
I've been reliably informed that things like free contraceptives are like 97% of what Planned Parenthood does. So I thought that already kind of existed. I mean,
No,
so, like,
I'm
I'm like,
no,
sorry.
listen,
Yeah.
the morning after pill especially, like, that's not free.
Sure, I'm kind of memeing. I'm sorry. That, like, as a political question, you might have. Yeah, I'll think about it. I don't know. That's,
Yeah,
I think it's a fair question. It's a fair question. Yeah.
I don't really view the morning after pill as an abortion. So because of that, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't provide that. I have my own personal moral beliefs about the morning after pill, such that I've given away my subscription to Plan B that I have through Amazon, and I won't be using that anymore. I've just since worked on my pullout game. I would say that I think that the Plan B pill is I think yeah, that I wouldn't see any moral justification for not being able to use that. Because I actually probably don't think that life begins, or I don't think that it's a life worthy of like protecting in the same sense, probably until a heartbeat. It's still I don't know a little hazy because it's very subjective when the life is worthy of rights. But in any case, I would say that yeah. So Plan B sounds like a pretty good thing to do, and obviously any other forms of IUDs, birth control pills, any of the other stuff that people want to do in order to like gain control to make sure that they're not getting pregnant when they don't want to, abstinence, waiting for marriage, all the other good stuff. I think you can do all those things and I'd be fine with it.
I can assure you that Plan B is not free, as a person who's had to buy it before.
I know. I know.
It was a very expensive climax. I just really wish.
Sub to Prime, gang. Help.
Whatever I was gonna
climaxes,
say just
right?
went
Prime,
right
you
out
got to
the
take some
window.
advice from Fnatic on your pullout game. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I do also, I briefly want to call out a lot of people who are pro-life throw out the 99% statistic of that being the 99% of abortions are opted for out of convenience. And I'm working to find the source so I can quote directly, and I'll drop it into the Discord combo as well. But that statistic, to the best of my knowledge, is coming from a 1994 study, which is severely outdated at this point. So I'm currently looking for the 2021 info, and I'll let you know as soon as I have it.
Yeah, I thought I saw a more recent one, and I wish I had it pulled up. So I'm happy to be corrected on that. Like, I think that whatever the current numbers are, I think that it is still the case that there might be reasons for this. Polling is always weird, or surveys are always weird, or studies are always weird. But to the best that we know, the vast majority of abortions are classified as elective, right? They're not coming in and saying, I have a health issue that requires me to get this. They're not saying I was raped. No, they're not saying it's an incestuous. Obviously, again, there's a bias there, like desirability bias and all these other things. Like, nobody's going to want to come in and just be like, yep, I'm in an incestuous relationship and I want an abortion. So that, that tamps the numbers down a little bit. But even if we assume that there's like an outsized number of those, still the vast majority are going to be elective.
And again, I think it's really accurate that you brought up the fact that it is self-reported, right? So if a woman is in an abusive relationship, she's probably not going to want to disclose that that's a impacting reason behind her decision. She might not choose to disclose her entire existing health history, but it could be something that's influencing her. And so again, I do think it's important that we use accurate statistics, and 99% is not the accurate statistic. I am going to look for it. I want to say it's maybe somewhere around 2/3 to 70%, which I get is still the majority, but to frame it as 99% is inaccurate.
So I don't know where you're basing 2/3 or 70%. I think that's completely inaccurate. I've never seen any numbers even remotely close to reflecting anything close to that.
I'll send it to Wick just after this, but like as a person who is very much pro-choice, this is not something we need to be on the defensive about, right? Of these elective abortions, right? Elective in the way that it's used in those statistics, it's basically miscellaneous. It's like it's not these other two categories, so it's this, right? We say that you're simply choosing to do this, but there's all kinds of coercive factors on a woman that make her not want to have that baby, right? So like a coercive factor is fucking capitalism in and of itself. It's
there's an economic category that you can self-report that it's for economic reasons.
I nod along, and you say a coercive factor is capitalism. I'm like, no, like we're never gonna reach them with this language, right?
No, I don't care. You can diss on capitalism and we can talk about it.
But I'm saying that all
these are supposed to account for that. Like they give them the option to say, is this for financial reasons? And a lot of people will say no. It's just I just don't want it, right?
Yeah, well, and
which for again, Prime, your point is taken. Like for you, it shouldn't matter, right? If they just don't want it, they don't want it, and they have that right. I think that's a fair point for you to make.
Yeah, that's
I
the point
people
I was
would do
gonna
that with
make.
living kids. All of a sudden, it would be a problem, right? Like I think, like just I don't want it, so therefore I'm going to murder it. Sounds crazy to I think a lot of people with decency, and I think that's where the problem comes
Decency.
from.
Well, even
that's
with
what I like.
living kids, look. Even with living kids, if a family doesn't want it, they have services provided, judgment free, or it should be judgment free, to hand it over for adoption and things like
Mhm.
that. And I understand that we don't have the technology to do that when it comes to if you believe they're children, fetuses in the womb, right? That we can't just like switch it to some kind of in vitro fertilization, some weird different like
Artificial
or
wombs,
like
yeah.
a artificial womb or something. But that's beside the point. At the end of the day, we as a society, we as a culture, we allow the ending of life under certain conditions. We recognize that under certain conditions, it's okay to end a life. So even if you do believe that it's a life at conception, or it's a life at a heartbeat, or wherever you draw the line, I think we can all agree, right? We could all, well, maybe except for you, Chris, here, but we can all agree that there are places and circumstances where we're okay with ending that life. Rape, incest being two very common ones, but we could draw other perhaps that we might be able to meet in the middle on here. But at the end of the day, like it's going back to the state level, and I think Doobie read out a list of states that are trying to ban it under all conditions. And I think that this is where the federal government has the responsibility to step in and guarantee the right for women to have the access to medical care, right? Like to medical care that could save their health or their sanity. And I
Sure.
think
Well,
that
sanity is way too freaking nebulous there. But what I can say is, and this is one of the things that's really pissed me off about a lot of these conversations, is the disgusting posturing. Because when you start saying, "Oh, it's just medical care," it's not just medical care. Like there are situations where it's medical care, where someone has heart conditions, and so their heart can't support both them and the baby. Or when there's things like that are going to happen, or you're finding out that the baby is going to have like some super duper severe medical conditions or things like that. That's when you can start saying, "Hey, this is medical care," right? When someone's actually threatened. Like a lot of these cases, there's literally nothing. They're perfectly healthy bodies. The majority of these cases, they are perfectly healthy bodies, perfectly capable of doing this, and they're just choosing to kill the baby. That's not medical care. So, like, whenever you start using this ridiculous terminology, knowing how much it's misused, it just makes you seem like you're the same dishonest leftist that we've been talking to all of these years.
So, do you not think that states are trying to ban it under all conditions, even the conditions that you said you'd be okay with exceptions for? Do you think I'm being dishonest with that? Do you think I'm lying?
A few states are doing that. The majority of states, the majority of states are not. The majority of states are not. And so, in that case, I would say that the few states that are doing this really terrible thing are awful. Obviously, it's a bad idea that you would say zero exceptions, especially for medical expediency. It's crazy as freak. But I think what's actually happening is you're getting that response shut down from the same thing that you guys have been doing. You guys have shut down the conversation and not allowed an inch to be gained so that no one ever even felt engaged. So now the same people have the power, and now they're saying, I'm not going to engage, and we're going to go as far as we can possibly get it because we felt unheard and unlistened to for all of this time. You guys created this problem.
So in those cases where you do agree there should be exceptions, these states are awful, as you in your words, for doing this. Do you think the federal government should step in and stop them?
Yes, I think the federal government should mandate that in cases of rape, incest, and medical expediency, there should be exceptions for abortion. And I think that they can do that under the freaking Constitution, which says that we all have a right to, liberty, life, and pursuit of happiness, blah, blah, blah. I would say for all of those reasons that the idea that you're going to force somebody to carry something to term that we have medical knowledge is going to kill the person is denying their ability to pursue life. It's very
how far would you
obviously
go with that?
defendable.
Out of curiosity, you mentioned death, but say it will carrying the baby to term may not kill the mother, but will negatively affect her health to a great degree for the rest of her life. Is that okay in that case?
Sure,
to
that sounds like
fair
some
enough.
medical. If you're
Okay.
talking about like something like maybe it's going to leave her with a weakened heart such that she'll be on oxygen for the rest of her life, or
Certainly,
something
yeah.
like that. Like, yeah, any kind of medical
I'm just
expediency.
asking where
Yeah,
we draw the line there is,
sure,
is all the
sure.
is the only question really.
Let's
get
So
go
can I
to
ask a
Doobie.
question?
Hmm?
Yes, I think that there's some truth to what Fnatic was saying, right? About people on the left hiding behind the idea that most abortions are like fuck, I can't remember what. Basically, implying that most abortions are happening because women have to get them, not because they want to get them, right? So Wick, I'm kind of curious as to where you would draw that line. So if it isn't for medical reasons, if it's not because they've been raped or had incest done to them, whatever the fuck, where's your line for where you'd allow an abortion to happen?
So I have a different line for my personal self, and I have a different line for what I think the government should stop or prevent someone from choosing. So me personally, I'm very uncomfortable with the concept of abortion. I would not advocate for it for me or any of mine or any in my sphere of influence personally. I would raise objection to it. But at the end of the day, I acknowledge it's not my choice to make. It's not my decision here, right? And neither should it be the government's. And I think the only people who should be able to draw that line, right, is at the end of the day, the mother, the person whose body
So
it
if it was
is.
like the day of, the moment before the baby was like coming out of the womb.
Oh no, I don't know
and
about
the mother
that,
was
right?
like,
Like,
mother was like, ah, fuck this.
no,
kid."
I think there should be some limits. I do.
What about like a month before?
I'm not sure where those limits are, right? I can't give you a firm answer here, and I apologize for that. But I do think that at least for the first two trimesters, we should allow them. But I would be comfortable with some restrictions. But I think that in the context of the conversation of how we are seeing it play out in the real world, some of these states are going for no restrictions, and that's what we got to be pushing back against, because I think almost
but
everyone
you're
here
pushing back
pushes
to like a
against
place
that.
where you don't know where the line is, right? That you're pushing back to.
But that's the key here, like, because everyone's line is going to be different, so everyone should have the ability to choose where their line is, and the government should step
It's
in.
not really. Yeah, but if you're crafting policy, like you can't just say, "Oh, well, it's up to the individual where it's illegal to like get an abortion." Right. So if some others do want it the day of or the day before, for them, that's where they put their line, so that's fine. But others, it's 2 months before, so up to 2 months before, it's fine. If you're going to push back against this, and I think this is one benefit that pro-lifers have, right, is most of them they have a very firm line, right, as to where they allow abortion, kind of what circumstances, or where they like disallow it like completely. But I think on the pro-choice side, a lot of people are very like, I don't want to say weaselly,
Wishy-washy?
wishy-washy, weak, beta,
Sure.
disgusting, and they're very like, oh, but we're pushing back, but to where? Like, where are you stopping? Where are you trying to get to? Like, that's what I'm curious about. And I get a Wick's answer. What about you, Genevieve?
I would support it up until viability. And again, I'm not a medical professional, so I can't say for certain where that is, but to my knowledge, it's somewhere around the 26-week mark. And I would say before viability, I 100% support it.
What about you, Ramos, if you don't mind me asking? Ginger.
Are you muted? Still muted.
Still muted.
Can you hear me?
There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I believe that it should be up to them until a certain point, which to me would be mid-second trimester.
So again, for the fourth time, Prime and I are the most like pro-woman women people on the panel, like every single time.
It's true.
No, I'm sorry. I just feel like this is like a criticism that I have like a lot of like pro-choicers, right? Is that like I feel like there's no agreement on where the line should be usually, and sometimes there is no line like in mind. So when you guys are pushing back against pro-life people whose baseline is typically, hey, this is a baby, it's a human being, don't fucking kill it, right? And if you're saying, hey, yeah, but it's okay to kill it, until a point, somewhere down the road. Like I feel like you need to have like it'd be very useful to have like a fucking solid position, right, to unite behind.
I wish it was so simple. I wish the situation were so simple where we could have like a consensus. I don't think it's as simple as you think it is. No.
Yeah.
It is extremely simple.
Let's not reduce this complex, like very sensitive topic down to like just talking points, right?
No,
It's not
we're not
it's
doing
not a talking
talking points. What? No. DB and I, our position is that abortion should be allowed up to when the baby is crowning, like the entire time, no restrictions. I love that look up in Ag's face. Absolutely no restrictions in place. When people need access to that care. Here's
wait, Prime. Can we not do the dishonest thing again? Like when people need access to it. When people need access to it, I think we agree. So in other words, hey, if the mother is going to die and you have to make a choice between the mother and the baby, then yes, she needs that access.
No.
But stop talking about that because that's not what we're talking about. Just in general, do you just support that in general, even if there's no medical expediency or anything? And can we stop doing the dishonest thing?
You have a problem with me saying the word need? Okay, that's fine.
I do.
I don't care. No, it's I'll accommodate you. Don't worry. All right, I got you.
Thank you.
All right, so we will. I want individuals to have access to reproductive services whenever they decide that it's something that is right for them. So, is that better?
Sure. I mean, it is better, but I think so. Then we just got to ask. So you would say a woman is in labor, the baby is fully developed, is perfectly capable. There's no medical issue whatsoever, but she just kind of decided, or she found out the day before the day before she went into labor, that her husband was cheating on her, and she decides, you know what, I don't want this kid, and it's a fully functioning, fully developed brained kid, and you're saying at that point she should be able to abort that kid.
Fanatic. So I'm going to answer that question directly. I promise I will. It's going to sound like I'm not, but I'm going to. Okay. So
you could start with that, but it's okay.
No. This is actually important, right? Because like this is the red herring that people on your side toss out all the time, right? That women are just kind of like this, kind of just like they don't understand the seriousness of pregnancy. That just because they feel like it, they might, right? That they'll. That like they change their minds, like they change their fucking handbags. This is the mindset behind questions like that, right? So the reason why I say, I'm going to answer your question, don't worry, but the reason why I say that like through the third trimester up till the end is because of this nonsense about saving the woman's life, right? Because someone's going to have to make that adjudication. When you say that to a medical professional, hey, we're going to lock you up. We're going to put you in jail for 10, 30 years or whatever the fuck, right? For violating this law. Like if you have the if you have this operation and the woman's life is not in danger. Okay, all right. So a woman comes to you. She's presented with a medical emergency, right? But is her life in danger? How likely is she to die? Well, how do we judge that, right? Is it 50%? Could that be it? I don't know. Is it 45%? Where's the line? Is it in the bill? Like, what is the percentage? How do you figure out where she lands in there, right? Like, and a doctor who is faced with that might decide, this could be serious, but maybe it's not serious enough, and I don't want to risk it. And so I'm not going to treat this person. I'm not going to give them the care. But when you put barriers up, the people who need that care will eventually, some of them won't be able to clear it. So, getting back to your question, right? Because I am so concerned about those women who need it for the life of the mother, right? For their to survive, or so that they don't get like impaired, right? Because another thing that can happen, right? They can be severely disabled, maybe by like a tough pregnancy. But because I care about them, I am more than willing to risk the off chance that some woman somewhere, right, will take this decision and do it in an unserious manner, right, and decide, or maliciously or whatever, sure, and decide to end her pregnancy early or late for some dumbass reason, right? I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that possibility if I get to save all those other women's life.
That's deep.
Okay, so let me get to a better. Let me
Really
ask you the question since you did a lot of talking around it and more qualifying than I think it was necessary for the question. You
Hold on, I didn't
Okay.
talk. I answered directly, correctly. I
Okay,
answered
all
it
right.
absolutely directly, and I explained why I felt the way I did. What do you mean? Okay.
Yeah, he said yes, and then he said why. He did it in
not
reverse
say
order,
yes
but
first.
yes.
He did
He
not.
said why, and then he
okay,
said
so all right, so he didn't do it in that way. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that you were being dishonest too. Okay, so
I-
good. So instead of all of the unnecessary qualifiers,
No, you are being dishonest and calling that dishonest.
instead of-
liar.
instead
What
of-
you are doing is you're taking a
instead
flip
of-
of the
instead
word,
of-
you're
shut
calling
up,
it dishonest,
instead
and then you are trying to
instead of-
present yourself as
instead
some
of-
deep
instead
moral
of-
thing
Hey,
because
okay,
you were
okay,
able to do this.
okay.
You're
All
just
I'm telling you
just do
is
it.
going to
I
shut up
dressed
now
up in
so I
clown
can continue
makeup.
making my
Okay,
point.
okay.
Shut up, Nick. Thank you. Shut up.
Okay, so now that you're done fucking
Instead
talking, you
of-
shut your fucking
instead
mouth and maybe
of-
listen a little bit.
Instead
Okay?
of
Maybe learn a little
Oh my
something
God! Knock it
here,
off!
a
Knock
little
it off!
fanatic,
Hey,
man.
everyone, shut
Are
up!
we
Everyone,
talk-
everyone, shut the fuck up! Thank you. I'm done with that. Thanks so much. All right, fanatic, finish your point, and then Ty has his hand up.
Lord have mercy. I'm about to give up on the conversation. Can you shut up for once in this? I was asking a question. You weren't even involved. Stop including yourself, moron. Anyway, so instead of all those qualifiers and all that other nonsense, if we have, because I still don't understand, I still don't know where you believe morally on just the issue that we're talking about
Sure.
without the qualifier. So then the
Okay.
question was, if we knew that it was just for elective reasons,
Absolutely,
would you
yes.
feel that that is morally permissible?
Absolutely,
Morally.
yes. Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Even if we knew for sure that it was like automatically decided, there was some sort of computer that could very obviously determine that any time a woman was at risk, that we would know it. You would still say, just electively, that if a woman wants to terminate it at the point that she's in labor, but not crowning, you would say that it's still terminatable, right?
All right, hold on. I guess I'm aiming a little bit. So let me try to answer that question better. What I prefer that a person not end their pregnancy for some like
No, that's not
silly
the question
reason.
I'm asking. I'm not asking what
Sorry.
you prefer.
Sorry.
I'm asking you, do you
No.
think it would
I'm
be...
trying. So okay. Maybe I used the wrong word then, right? Do I think it would be morally wrong to end your child's life for some silly reason? Yes.
No, not,
sure.
not just some silly reason, but whatever. Like,
Oh.
just because you just want to, because you found out that the husband was cheating on you,
That's
and
why
you
I was
decide you don't
trying.
want to...
Yeah, for that reason. Okay, sure, whatever, right? Would I say that's I think that's morally like bad, I guess, or whatever, right? Sure, I could say that, but I would say that the risk of that happening is not worth keeping other mothers from accessing the care that they need.
I got you. So, okay, so as long as we're in agreement there, then that's where the moral wrong is. I guess, so then maybe we might be able to like see eye to eye in the sense that, yeah, I guess we would kind of, I don't know. I would imagine that our medical field, considering like they could be sued for malpractice and things like that, I'd imagine that they have to be able to make these calls on specifically like what's like terminal and what's not, where there's a heavy risk and what's not. And like these things can probably be like they're not entirely subjective. I'm pretty sure you could have like entire panels of people to decide these kinds of things, right?
They'll be dragged into court though, right? Fanatic, right? These individuals know that someone's going to get dragged into court in one of those states. It's going to happen very soon. But
and 99% of the time they wouldn't in the medical field because they have the insurance for medical malpractice, which is why those doctors are almost never sued.
No. You're talking about simply being sued. I'm talking about criminal prosecution, which is what they're up for now. Right, like I was looking at those laws on Saturday. Right, looking at those laws, the provider is up for either being fined by the state directly, which I'm not sure if your medical insurance can even help you with that. But and two, being put in jail. So like that's what they're facing. So and that's up to a jury, right, to decide. Hey, like, does this sound like this woman's life was in enough danger?
Sure, I guess so. I don't know. I would say that, like, yeah, for most people, I would think this is where, like, we've seen, like, what I would say is moral degradation. The idea that, like, people can look and say that a fully functioning, like, fully developed baby should be able to be killed because of somebody's whatever in order to protect the like the chance that somebody completely extraneous to that individual murder might need it for some medical reasons, and so therefore they're not going to be able to get it. So therefore, we're going to allow you to terminate this child that's fully healthy, fully functional, that you don't need to do. It's crazy as freak to me.
But-
I've never heard just
But we don't
such a
have that
wanton.
machine, right? We don't have that machine.
We don't need that
to-
machine. We just need, like, medical precedent that basically
Several
says
doctors have spoken out since this ruling, stating that they either have practiced, or once the laws change, they will be practicing in a state where they can only intervene when there is a serious cause to believe that the mother's life is at risk. And unfortunately, it puts them in a
Sounds great.
situation of waiting until this woman is super, super close to death, to Prime's point, because they don't want to make that call at a point where they could be prosecuted by the jury for having made it too soon. And unfortunately, by the time they are able to intervene, we've now created a far more complicated risk where chances are they're not going to be able to successfully remedy the situation at that point. Medicine is best when it's practiced in a preventative way, absolutely, but it's secondly best practiced when it can be immediate, when you can access it as soon as possible.
How do you feel so comfortable taking so few words and running so very far with them? Like, none of the doctors have said anything about, like, oh, well, because of that, it's going to cause us to wait
Several
until the problem
doctors-
is
She just
incredibly
mentioned
severe.
several doctors.
No, that's not what she
Are you
mentioned.
sure?
Was what she mentioned was, before you interject incorrectly again, Wick. What she mentioned was.
Oh, this is
that
fun.
What she mentioned was.
Over here.
What she mentioned was that the doctors said that they felt like, because of the fact that they had that the doctors felt like they would have to wait until there was a serious medical condition. Now, that's not saying that the medical condition has to be at such a severe level that she's in some immediate danger. That's not what that means, because you can early identify it. In my own family, I've seen cases in which they were able to determine at, like, the 2-month mark. At the 2-month mark, hey, you can't handle this pregnancy. I drove a.
It's almost as if people have different experiences than you. It's almost that your experience isn't the experience of others. It's almost as if, like, other people exist. It's really weird. I know. I know that false faith fanatic can't really understand.
Oh, shut up! Shut up! Wick, I promise you're gonna have a chance to be Ty. Then it'll be you, Wick, right? Fanatic, get your point across, right? Which I'm gonna yell at you about in a second. Ginger,
thank you. Wait, do you actually want to have a conversation, or do you just want this? Do you want this to be beleaguered every time? Because, like, I can just stop talking. Like, I'll do that if that's what you would prefer. All right, I promise you, this is the last thing I'll say. I promise you. So I drove my sister to the freaking abortion clinic because of the fact that she couldn't, like, they told her point blank, you will not carry this baby to term. Your body cannot handle this, and so on and so forth. And got yelled at by the abortion nigga all day. Like, it was nonsense. Like, it was like, oh, you're supporting abortion. It's like, no, that's not what this is. This is medical expediency. I need whatever. Da, da, da. And obviously, abortion is, like, a really terrible thing. You cannot drive afterwards. So, like, I understand that, but they were able to identify that extremely early. I've seen different family members, a cousin who they were able to identify extremely early. Hey, this is really bad. And they decided, well, we're going to go ahead and try to risk it anyway. And then it got incredibly where we literally were praying that this person even freaking survived, and they got lucky. So yes, you can spot these things really, really early. And if there's laws that say that there needs to be medical expediency, those things would fall underneath it. I don't know why we're moving to something else, but everyone else can respond, and then I'm done.
Fanatic. I'm going to respond to you. It's going to be then again Tiberius, Wick, and Ginger, right? So one, there are some cases where it doesn't happen early, right? Yes, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but there's some conditions that just happen. A woman was talking about, like, how her baby, and this was, I heard this years ago before this occurred, talking about how her baby like basically started to die in her womb. Right, like this, like, it was a healthy baby before. She had been getting checkups, right? But at a certain point in time, it suffered this. I don't remember exactly what the the condition was, but basically started to die in her womb, and this was going to kill her. She had wanted the baby. She was excited about the baby, but the baby was dying, and so she needed a late-term abortion. And this was, I think, this was days before she was supposed to give birth. Like, things happen, right? So like you can check, a baby can be fully healthy and then something can happen, right? The umbilical cord wrapped around the neck, and maybe like the baby dies before you can intervene. There's all kinds of things that can happen as you go. Like, you agree with that? You agree that that makes sense, that there are things that might not be immediately apparent, or an event can happen, or maybe she could suffer a trauma, right? Like, she's just walking around, she suffers some physical trauma, and then she's in a situation where the pregnancy is dangerous to her. You would agree on that, right?
No.
You wouldn't agree that that's the thing that can happen. You think that I'm making that up? That's.
I don't really feel like engaging it, but yeah, sure. Go ahead, make your point. Keep making your point.
Okay, all right, well, whatever. So that's the thing that does happen to everyone else. That's the thing that actually does happen, is that these medical emergencies happen. Well, we can start searching for them if we actually need proof here, right? But that's the thing that happens to individuals, where they the baby dies, right? Or the goes through some like a sudden emergency, and they need that care. And then so as Doobie said previously, there are states that aren't having any exception, right? That they're banning it no matter what, right? There is a country, I believe it's Morocco, if I'm getting that wrong, I apologize, right? Where, if I remember correctly the story, there's an American who was there. They went on a vacation, right? Like, and this is now, I'm talking about right now, right? They went on vacation to this, and she was pregnant, right? She suffered some sort of medical emergency, and now she needs abortion. She needs an abortion.
Malta case.
Malta?
No,
Was it
wait.
Malta?
Yeah, the Malta.
Yes,
Malta.
no,
Thank
the Malta
you.
case. Hang
Okay.
on, no, let's talk about this. I'll talk
Okay.
about this with you, Prime. Please.
Okay. Thank you,
Yes.
Steve Summer, for the 5 subs.
Please, I'll talk about the Malta case. The Malta case has been blown up. The reporting you've seen on it is wildly inaccurate. It misunderstands the law in Malta. It's not like it's so frustrating. Okay, so again, as I mentioned earlier, Malta is the only member of the EU that fully bans elective abortion completely. So most of the EU, you cannot get an elective abortion after 12 to 14 weeks. Malta fully bans elective abortion. Their law fully permits when what we are calling an abortion, what they would call a premature induction, is clinically indicated to get that in every case. Okay, so what's happening in the case in Malta right now is this. I'm looking up the medical term, so I'm not saying anything wrong. Sorry. The woman was experiencing a premature rupture of membranes, which is not necessarily a deadly incident. There are people who have that who carry to term just fine. It can result in an infection. At the point that an infection results, induction is clinically indicated. The thing to do is to give birth to the child that is still living, regardless of where it is in the pregnancy. So she, at this point, the details are fuzzy. None of the reporting makes clear what's going on here. But at this point, she does not have an infection, is not clinically indicated for that induction, and so cannot get that procedure in Malta, yes. So in other nations, yes, you could elect at the point that that thing happens, when you could still carry this pregnancy to term, choose to get an abortion electively. You can't in Malta. Her life is not at risk yet unless she has an infection. If she has an infection, she can get an abortion the way that we're talking about in Malta. It's just been so poorly reported on in the media. And Malta is, again, it's a very weird case. It's an outlying case. It's a nation of 100,000 people. It's a fucking island. Okay, so it's really hard to draw any like generalizable conclusions from it, but they have one of the lowest maternal mortality rates in the world with a complete ban on elective abortion. They've clearly found a way to handle it to where swaths of women are not dying because of this policy, okay? So that, like, what I wanted to add earlier in this conversation is I think one of the reasons our like policy conversations in the US are somewhat handicapped in this conversation is because the pro-life position has been formed discursively over time in opposition to a position that I kind of admire, like the ghoulish consistency, right? That it is effectively a bodily autonomy issue, not an issue of like life or personhood or rights. And so it's become like both sides have polarized and become extreme in their rhetoric and their argument and the policies that they support, where I think we have examples of ethical, legal and medical systems that I think I could probably support globally that are still more restrictive than what people like you are willing to grant. that I think accomplish the goals that all of us want, which is fewer women dying, fewer people just deciding randomly, I don't want this baby, and people having the option, if they actually need it, to get the medical care that they need. So, yeah.
Okay. I've taken enough time. I'll finish my point later on with Fanatic. Let's go to Ty, Wick, and then Ginger.
Okay, to hit what was kind of sub-hit there real quick before I reply to our good friend Doobie, because I have to rewind that far, is that one of the biggest reasons that I'm actually as remotely as pro-choice, if you will, as I am, is because the woman is not the only person that makes that decision. This is also up to the doctor, which is backed up by a medical board of ethics, and if it wasn't for that, I'd probably be a lot more pro-life. So there is a second choice in that equation for me, and that does matter to me. The other side of that, Doobie, where you were talking about, where it's just like, oh, it's easy, it's simple. I think if you have that kind of moral like compass, that's great and that's wonderful. I can tell you right now that for me, that is not an easy conversation to have when it comes to abortion. And looking at where people peg on the, I guess you want to graph out the positions of abortion, it's everywhere. There's like statistical like clumps where you can put people in, but overall, like it's got the entire gambit. It is literally polka dotted all over the place. The only thing I can literally tell you is that if you put the entire consensus into like a median, it's somewhere around the idea that it's probably around the first trimester, or exceptions to up to about 12 weeks. It seems to be where the general data is pointing that Americans were want to go. But if anyone wants to say it's easy, like great for you, man. But like clearly Americans are having a trouble with this one.
Well, Americans have trouble with lots of easy things, though, right? So I think the reason I say it's easy is because I think if you were to run down the argument on the pro-choice side to the conclusion, the natural conclusion, it would be where Prime and I are, right? And I feel like maybe it's uncomfortable for people, but I just think that's where you go, right? If you're going to take a pro-choice position, using bodily autonomy as the driving force. And on the pro-life side, I think Eucharist's position is actually the logical conclusion, right? If you were to go that direction, right? I feel like people are afraid to follow their convictions to like where they actually lead on this topic.
We don't have to take every train to the final stop, right? We can get off board at any point. And I think that simply to fetishize consistency and fetishize this, like we have to be internally consistent and take everything to this further, the most extreme logical conclusion we have, I think is actually hurting discourse right on the subject, because I think we can find spots, like for me in this discussion, the most important things, right, are what should the government be able to say is okay and what the government should be able to say is not okay, what sort of societal effects that will have, and what sort of health effects will that result in? What will be the result of these laws coming into place? Like, I can go through example after example. Prime gave one. There are plenty others that I could cite where, for whatever reason, these issues aren't caught early. Whether or not they were too scared to tell their parents, and so they didn't get a checkup till they were showing, whether or not they were feared they were going to be judged by the religious community for even looking into these things.
Okay, but you're hiding behind like the sob stories, right? So what if it is as simple?
What am I hiding behind exactly?
Well,
I haven't finished my point.
So what if it is as simple as a woman? She has a partner. A week before she's meant to give birth, she finds out that the partner's been cheating on her, and she wants to end the relationship. And part of ending that relationship is cutting ties, including the child, right? The growing child within her. If that is as simple as it is to her, right? She doesn't want to be associated with this dude anymore because now she hates him. She doesn't want to go through with the birth because then she's going to have this child out there somewhere in the world. Even if she gives up her guardianship, it's going to be out there in the world. It's representation of what he did to her, a reminder of the relationship, and all this sort of shit. What if it's just that simple? Why not allow her to do it?
Because that is, well, first of all, I think she should be allowed to do it, but whether it's moral or not, no, it's deeply immoral. I think that's a deeply kind of disgusting thing almost. I would personally judge them for it. But again, that's not the issue. The issue isn't whether I think it's moral or what I think about it. It's what the government should step in. I think Prime elucidated why there are very big dangers when you make sure that when doctors feel that if they do not feel that if they do take action, that they will be criminally prosecuted for it. Like, even if it wouldn't happen, even if they just feel that, that's going to affect the care that they provide, right? And we can see this happening. Madam Genevieve mentioned several doctors that have said this is happening. We cannot believe them. If you don't believe them, that's you, right? That's on you. But if you do, and I do, because I've seen this happen before, right? Not with doctors in this case, but I've seen the chilling effect, fear of punishment for doing a thing or speaking out or speaking up. So people just don't. And I think this is going to have some very negative consequences, and that's why I
So can I
think the
ask you,
government should step out.
I want to rewind 180 seconds for a second and hit what Doobie was saying. Like I 100% get like taking a principle and wanting to like max it out, see where that goes, and like follow through to the most consistent that you can. This is where I keep having problems, and maybe this is just my moral compass in the way that it works. But like, it's not that I don't want to do that. It's where I consistently have clashes and where one moral principle basically starts getting into contact with another one. So just as a kind of an example here, I think meritocracy is actually a core concept for me as an ethical principle, and I would love to have that. And so when people are like, "Oh, hey, let's do the whole service guarantee citizenship kind of thing," I'm like, "Yeah, that's great, let's do it." But then I also have another principle, which is kind of pretty much overrides that in the regards that I think people should have the right and the dignity to make choices for them fucking selves and have a voice in where that goes and the society. Those two are antithetical things. So I have to fucking figure out, how do I make that work ethically in my goddamn head? And at least for me, is that so one point or another, one of them has to win out. And that keeps me from going into these absurd, ridiculous things like, you got to follow the principle 100%. I can't do it. Like, something breaks in my head.
The thing is, I can understand that, right? But the thing is, I don't think, first off, that it's absurd or ridiculous. I don't think it's like an obsession with a consistency. I think this is just the most logical, moral place to be, right? So, Wick, you said earlier that you think this woman should be allowed to have that abortion, right? Even if it were a week before she was meant to give birth. So you should then be in favor of at least advocating for that position, right? When you're talking about what the government should do, not what you like personally, right? I can agree that, hey, it's icky to kill a baby, but as far as like what the government should do or the government should allow, you should be on my side and Prime side, and so that, hey, they should be allowed up to the moment of conception.
I understand what you're saying, but it's very hard for me to. I realize this is a personal issue, right? Like a personal issue of me being willing to go that far, because it does, as Tiberius said, it rubs up against
What's the damage of
the possible damage. While I do think that, like, a Fanatic's example would be vanishingly rare, I think that it might happen, right? Once or twice. So I think that, and also when it comes to the pragmatism of the thing, politics is the art of the possible. And while I think that if like pushing for this, like that for anything goes up to when it's crowning, this doesn't win politically, I don't think. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think that wins politically. But I think that my more reasonable stance, or say Madame Genevieve's until it's viable, or like at 26 weeks, I think that more reasonable stance is a political winner. And I think that is something we could take to get signed into law, right? Because regardless of what I want, it's all about what I can get. And I think that's a political winner, and I think that's what I can advocate for
but
effectively.
I think when you start off with the compromise, when you're forced to compromise further, you end up at a weaker, at an even weaker position, right? So you're compromising from the start, right? So my position and Prime's position, unfortunately, is about as popular in the United States as Euchre's position.
I just deeply agree with that. Euchre's, like that, I'm starting from compromise. Okay. I think taking such a firm, radical position just shuts down the debate.
It should be allowed. You already agree that it should be allowed, right? So you're compromising because you think that it is impossible. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you said earlier that you do think that.
I don't think it's politically. I don't think it's politically viable right now in the United States, right?
Okay,
but I really want to push it back against this, if I may. I'll be as concise as possible. I really want to push back against this idea that we have to take the radical stance and then work back towards this. No, I think if we take too radical of a stance, people just won't come to the table at all. Right? They'll realize, oh man, well, we can't talk to this guy. He's crazy, and so they'll just shut down and won't talk to you anymore.
But the viability thing is, again, so the reason the viability thing doesn't make any sense to me is because you'll get the question, hey, okay, so if you're gonna outlaw it up to the point of after the point of viability, why not just wait until the baby's viable? Why not just say, hey, you can't get this abortion until you need to wait until the baby's viable, and then you can have it evicted, or we'll take it out and we'll stick it in an incubator, and it won't be your baby anymore. And hey,
do we have incubators?
You're at 15 weeks. Well, shit, wait another 10 weeks, and we'll go through with the birth, and once we can get it out of you, you'll evict the baby. It won't be your problem anymore. This is just like a back alley way to restrict abortions.
You're completely missing the point of the viability and personhood argument, which is, yes, the mother should be able to exercise her right to bodily autonomy and make decisions for her body. The reason that a lot of us have a line somewhere near viability is because at that point, there are arguably two people involved. That's where the line is different. That's where the personhood is determined. And if you want to think of
I'm
things
agreeing that there's
logically, then that's kind of where the argument is coming from, is prior to viability, it's not deserving of the same rights as a fully functioning, viable human would be.
Yeah, okay, well, again, why not just force her to wait till week 27 where you magically believe that it's a human being where it wasn't before?
Because being pregnant can cause bodily harm and lots of other things, and it's much easier to, as I mentioned before, it's much easier to receive medical care at your first possible option rather than waiting. Another reason for that would be, people bring up this incubator argument. That's not nearly as accessible as pro-life would like to make it seem. And additionally, the process of giving birth could very well be the dangerous factor that the woman is trying to avoid. Perhaps it's the actual process of labor and the great bodily harm that comes along with it that's preventing her from wanting to go through this. If she has the chance to have a chemical abortion
but you could just say
previously, the risks are lower than taking Tylenol.
But you could say that, hey, that fear you have of the bodily harm that could come with like giving birth, that's not worth the life of a human being. And in 2 weeks, that thing inside of you will be a human being. So why should we wait?
Doobie, you're siloing these arguments.
You're saying we should wait. I'm not posing that. I'm saying we should act immediately.
No, I'm saying she should be able to get the abortion at any point for any reason she comes up with. I don't understand why you would say, hey, in 2 weeks, this thing inside of you will magically be a human being where it isn't now, when there's no clear line on where that happens.
I draw the line at viability, not because I say that's a magic black and white line, but it's because it's probably the best that we have. And I don't think that 26 weeks is always going to look the same for every fetus and pregnancy. There are a lot of differences, and every single pregnancy is going to be unique. However, we choose viability as the best compromise that we can have to this situation that's really tough, where we're trying. Yeah, because that's how we find solutions.
But why? Like, why would you start with a compromise if the other side's argument is, hey, this is a life from the moment that
I think that it's a lot more likely that you make progress taking baby steps than waiting until it's appropriate to take massive leap.
No, I think you start out.
I think if we can make progress
with a
towards
consistent,
the direction
logical,
that's
and moral
representative
position
of what the majority of Americans
respecting a woman's
feel,
bodily autonomy,
then that's
you start
a
out
step in the
there,
right direction.
and then if you need to compromise to a position that doesn't respect a woman's bodily autonomy, that isn't logical or consistent or moral, and you need to do the viability thing or the second trimester thing, whatever the fuck it is, then you compromise and go to there afterwards. I don't think it makes sense to start with a compromise when the other side is not compromising.
Starting with that is because that's where the majority of Americans feel. The majority of Americans feel that abortion should be allowed up into a specific point, and so I'm proposing legislation that's representative of the majority.
I want to.
Let's go to Ginger, who hasn't gotten a chance to go yet.
Well, I don't see where abortion till the point of crowning, or however you want to say it, is necessary. I'm sorry, it's just funny to me. Like it's terrifying and funny all at the same time. Is necessary without medical reasons. So for them to be, for no rhyme or reason, what person is just going to be like, and especially a woman who is going through the most emotional time possible in her life to decide at that time I shouldn't have this kid. Like, there's reasons why they have somebody like your case of emergency type person who, like, there's somebody who they can discuss with outside of the erratic woman in the hospital saying, screaming at everybody. Like, I just feel like it's just not necessary, and I feel like most women would end up regretting that in the long run.
So, that Ginger, I agree with you. That's actually my point. So my point
Oh,
is
I was
that
responding to Doobie.
Well, but that's
Doobie,
my point too.
yeah,
I would,
our points are the
yeah,
same.
I would put this like, so on the right side, right? You see people say, hey, you need to make exceptions for rape and incest, right? Well, I think on the other side, this is an exception you need to make for women who just want the abortion for any fucking reason. I think that saying, hey, you need to wait until there's a medical issue or until the mother's life is at risk or some other thing, I think opens you up to people needing to wait until they hit that threshold when they just don't want the fucking kid, and it's fine for them to just not want the kid. Like, I think if you're going to talk about bodily autonomy, that's one of the things that you need to respect is that at some
Which is why
point,
I
some
advocate
women,
for early
very
intervention.
few of them just don't want the kid, and if at any point they decide not to have it, it's totally fine.
Yeah,
Generally,
Ginger,
people who are choosing
So
that.
what I wanted to say, hold on, well, I just wanted to respond to this what she just said. I think, well, one, I agree with Doobie that I think that if she doesn't want the kid, she doesn't want the kid. However, right, I combine that with what you said, Ginger, and that there are very few women, right, if any, right, very few women who have spent 9 months with this child inside their body, and bonding with it the way that women do, when like they're about to give birth, right, and anticipating this baby, and then at the last second say, yeah, I just don't feel like it anymore. Whatever, right? Or the example that Fanatic gave, oh, he was cheating on me, so now I'm just gonna end the baby. The baby that I was excited for, I love that, prepared for. There's all this the preparing that a woman does before she gives birth. She goes through. There's so many things that a person does, and in that time, right, she's like excited about what's gonna happen, right? If she wants to be pregnant. So like, I don't believe that there will be many women at all who would actually do that, right? In fact,
Okay.
instead, I say it's my position that, but people who will most likely need this will be people who have who are having a medical emergency. Oh, and I found those medical emergencies because I didn't believe they existed, right? I found them. It took 5 minutes on Google. Preeclampsia, eclampsia, what was it? Gestational diabetes, placental abruption, placental previa, and these things are very easy to find, right? But anyway, like, that's what's going to happen. That's the reason why. But but the difference between you and me is that I'm not going to put up a barrier for them to get that care. Right? Because once you have that barrier, there are going to be some women, for whatever reason, who aren't going to be able to clear it. Some women who maybe, like, for instance, didn't get prenatal care, right? Maybe they couldn't afford it, whatever the reason, they didn't get it, and then now they're having an emergency, and now, like, instead of just giving her the abortion that she needs to save her life, or for whatever reason, right, to save her life, we have to go through a whole thing. We got to prove that it's a medical emergency, that it's of a high enough standard, so that we don't get prosecuted when we do this emergency. So I'm trying to save all those women's lives. Ginger, if you want to respond.
I guess I'm confused. Why it would be necessary outside of medical reasons.
It wouldn't be, and that's exactly my point, Ginger. That was the question that I was asking that he was responding to originally. It was just about the idea about it being elective, and I think your outrage, or not outrage, that's maybe too strong a word, but your confusion is exactly my confusion. Why would that ever be a?
You didn't listen to what I said, though.
But
you understand what I'm saying?
I promise I listened.
Okay, but I answered the question. I can say it again if you want me to. You're saying you're confused.
But
as to why
I feel like you brought it back to medical emergencies at the end when you were explaining why it would be necessary, and I'm saying, why is it necessary outside of those medical emergencies?
Okay. I guess maybe we're getting words confused, right? On those other instances, when it's outside of a medical emergency, then it wouldn't be quote unquote required. Juby's nice position is that, well, we don't care if it's not required in those instances. It should still be allowed. My point is that that's an extremely rare thing that we shouldn't be worried about. So yes, there could be instances in my policy prescription where someone could theoretically after 9 months, right, or almost 9 months, decide that she's gonna get rid of this child. And at that point, yeah, it's not required, but that's not my prerogative. I don't really care about that. My focus is on those individuals who need that care, and not putting any barriers for them to get that care.
I guess we're okay. I understand it now. But I guess where the problem would lie is that let's say the doctor listens to the woman and she has the abortion, and all of a sudden she comes out and she says afterwards, I didn't want that. Why would you listen to me in that state of mind? Like, then it becomes on the doctor's shoulders. Like, there's a lot that would have to be put into place for.
Are you
I
saying
just
if a woman is having a mental breakdown?
no. Like, I'm saying not it's not I don't necessarily call it a mental breakdown, but I've seen a lot of women go through birth. I've seen a lot of my friends go through birth, and I've seen them change into a completely different person
Huh?
when they're going through birth. I don't want this baby anymore. Like, why am I having this? Why am I doing this? And then immediately when that baby's out, it's a completely different story to them. Like,
Okay.
it's an instant connection. It's an instant bond.
Okay.
And I feel like a lot of women, um like the problem would lie with the doctors and like malpractice and things like that, where they would have to necessarily listen to this woman if it was legal, right?
How would it be malpractice if a patient requested a service and then decided that they didn't want the service afterwards? How's that malpractice?
Because because it's up to the doctor at a certain point to decide what's healthy or not for.
Well, Ginger,
I
if
mean,
I can
if
still
you're
make it,
saying that,
can I
hold
still
on,
make
hold
a
on,
position
hold
really
on,
quick?
hold on. I'm handling. We can
I
come
maybe
back to
just
you.
completely
God.
No, we
misunderstand
can
Let
come
me
this.
back
I'm
to you.
so
let me
sorry.
steal minute. Come
Oh
on.
no, don't worry. In this situation, right? One, I don't think that. I think when it comes to any particular care that a patient is asking, I think doctors go through these that calculus any which way, right? Hospitals do that whenever. But still, if a woman has decided that she wants to give up her pregnancy, then it is what it is. Like among your friends, was it the fact that abortion was difficult to get was the only reason why they didn't do it? I mean, like if they were going through that transformation, you're saying that during that pregnancy, they decided like I don't understand why I'm having this baby, right? Well, then why didn't they just get an abortion when they had the chance?
Okay. The thing is that it would be so hard for the mom in this. Like, um, you know what? I belatedly kind of got your point, and um, I'm I'm I still don't I don't agree with your opinions on it, but I do understand it now. So
Okay.
I'm sorry for the confusion,
No,
guys.
fair enough. No, that's fine. I'm more than fine. Okay.
It's not fine. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah, kiss my ass, dude.
Let's go to Fanatic, then Genevieve, then Doobie. Anyone else?
Oh, never mind. You guys got it.
Okay. Genevieve.
Super quick point that generally, and again, not in all circumstances, but typically, when you're in need of medical care, if you're conscious and coherent, you have to sign a form that's your consent to care, consent to treatment. And whether or not you may change your mind on it later, that generally is going to protect the doctor and the hospital, because you gave your legal consent. And obviously there's a million situations where somebody might feel one way or another, but I would say that typically most procedures, either the patient or whoever their power of attorney next of kin is does typically have to sign a consent to care. I know that because I've signed 100 million of them myself, and a hospital is not going to move forward without that unless, in the case that there's an extreme emergency, the person is unconscious, there's no next of kin, no identifiable power of attorney, and then they're going to go based on like the medical code of ethics and how they should best proceed. But typically there will be a discussion of, this is what you're doing, I consent to it, I understand the risks.
Okay.
And let's go to Doobie and then Tiberius.
So 2 things. I wanted to point out that Fnatic lied. He said he wouldn't be speaking anymore. He said he promised he wouldn't speak anymore, and then he spoke a little bit ago. I want you to speak. I think you have a lot to contribute, but you're a liar. Okay, fuck you. Secondly, I feel like we haven't really gotten to the second part of the question, like the original topic. So do any of you feel like things like civil rights or free speech, etc., like these things should be left up to the states? Like, what separates those rights from the right to abortion?
Well, I don't think they're separate. I believe in my opening statement, I kind of went over it. So no.
Same. I also made the same statement as in my opening.
Yeah, so the reason we had to have the Civil Rights Act is because the Constitution doesn't say dick shit about race and sex and gender and all these things that we care about, right? So why would I'm just like, this boggles my mind that we're trying to lump these things together. The Supreme Court didn't come down from on high and say, no, actually, secretly, deep down, the 14th Amendment and the 9th Amendment, and maybe the 4th and 3rd, and maybe the 1st, maybe the 2nd Amendment, maybe those actually secretly contained a rule that says we have equal rights based on our race. No, because they knew that they didn't fucking mean that, so they passed a fucking law. I'm just like so confused why we're trying to lump these things together.
Chris, you're too focused on Roe. Your focus is on
Roe.
No, saying that, like,
I'm not. I'm really not.
Okay.
I'm really not. Because what we have in the history of the Supreme Court is we have, in the 9th Amendment, a reminder, hey, by the way, we have not listed every right that exists. And we have a legal tradition of saying, oh, by the way, here are some unenumerated rights that fall within the edges of some other rights that are already established. And when it came to the Civil Rights Act, we knew that it just wasn't going to fly. And also, we weren't going to sit around and wait on the Supreme Court to magically decide that they discovered a Civil Rights Act in the Constitution. We passed a Civil Rights Act.
Chris, the point of the question, like I said, you're too focused on Roe. That's not the point of the question, right? Like, separately from this case, right? Forget Roe existed, right? Which I'm sure you'd be happy to do.
No, it's gone. So it's
okay,
great.
But
Done.
I'm talking about like the right itself, right? Whether this right itself to like have control of your body, right? Women having control of her own body. Whether that right itself should be legislated on the federal level or on the state level, right? And whether like comparing that to civil rights themselves. So if you're saying that the reason why we had to get civil rights like done on a congressional level is because it had no basis like previously within our law. Okay, right. Well, then if you are under the impression that abortion has no basis, then why wouldn't we also handle that on the federal level as well, right? Separately from the using of Roe.
That's why I said at the beginning, right? Is like, if this is what you all think, if you guys still think this is a fundamental right now, it's not, right? The Supreme Court decided it was. Okay, so politically, I'll say politically. Sorry.
It should be.
You might
Let's say that it should be.
Okay, you think it should be, right? Right now in American politics, it is not a political right that we have. Okay, we decided it existed in the Constitution, and now we have decided that case was bad and it has been thrown out. If you think it is a right that can exist, the only mechanism of establishing our political rights as Americans is not wait around for the Supreme Court to do it. If you think this is a law all Americans should have, you should absolutely advocate for it at the federal level. You could do the same thing we did with the Civil Rights Act. I think if you think the Civil Rights Act is legitimate in any way, shape, or form, a similar right to choice or act would be legitimate at a federal level. Do it. Try. Go for it. But if that's what, go for it. 100%.
Well, thanks for answering the question.
We will.
We will. Yeah, that's what we're advocating for,
my friend.
Yeah, I got 2 things here, and paralleling off of you, Chris. Like, I actually agree with the right on the legal doctrine that this wasn't a thing, and I made that very, very clear. But on the whole, here is that one, I want federally mandated rights, social rights, and particularly like what scares the shit out of me on the opinion piece that Clarence Thomas wrote was that abortion isn't a right at all, which I can kind of get on a moral level, but I think there needs to be some leeway there. But more particularly, privacy is not a right to the American citizen because it's not in the Constitution at all. Boys, if we've got people legislating on that or juring on that, excuse me, we need to put some legislation in right fucking now. Privacy is incredibly important, particularly in the days of cyberspace, particularly in the pace of infrared cameras. If we're going back that far, we need to start throwing out some amendments really goddamn quick. The second thing, and I'm sorry I'm kind of paralleling off a little bit, but the second thing is the honest conversation part. Americans, we have to admit that we've not allowed for an honest conversation. We're always playing politics and trying to curtail the people that we want to appease to get them on our team, but we're not able to start from an honest place where it's like, hey, look, this is my opinion. What's your opinion? Let's talk this shit out. I've actually seen more honest conversations with the repeal of Roe v. Wade than I've seen probably in the last 5 years combined. So you know what? Thank you, America. You're actually doing something right for once. We're actually talking about what we believe in and where we're coming from. All
Okay.
that.
So we've run out of time on